Hello, everybody. We are here at the Warrior exhibit in Fayetteville, Tennessee, and I'm Don Counts, and we've got Linda Williams here. Linda, tell us who we have today.
We have somebody that Lincoln County knows really well. We have John Bradford, and he served 22 years in the Army.
That's right.
And we are happy to have you today, John.
Yeah, glad to be here. Maybe I can answer some questions for you.
Tell us a bit about yourself and what led you into the military.
Well, I went to school at MTSC back then,
Yeah.
and back then everybody had to take ROTC, and then first 2 years, and they paid you a little bit the third and fourth year, so I stayed in, and then and by that time everyone who went through ROTC had to go into the service right then. There was no assignments to reserve units or guard units. Everyone went on active duty. So I went on active duty in June 1963, right after I graduated. And that's how I got started. I'd also taken the flight training at MTSC, and I was supposed to go to flight school, but the Army had better plans, and I wound up going to Germany for my initial assignments. And so I spent 2.5 years in Germany before I went to flight school. And I was over a little over a year, came home, got married. Norma went back to Germany with me. We were there for like, I guess 6 months or more before we came back and went to flight school. So that gets me up to 1966 when I went through flight school. Of course, at the time I was in Germany, I was in the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, which had border duty at that time. Of course, that was before the wall came down, and so it was exciting times to serve on the Czechoslovakian border. But during what time we had there together, Norm and I traveled quite a bit during that first tour. And eventually we went back for another tour, and we traveled a lot with all three kids. But going back to flight school, I went through flight school in '66. After that, I went to a transition course for the OV-1 Mohawk. Early '67, did some additional training, and went to Fort Lewis, Washington, to a new Mohawk unit that was forming up to go to Vietnam, and we went to Vietnam in the fall of '67. I was there most of '68, which was during Tet, so it was exciting times over there. But the first tour I did mostly flying, and
Was that helicopters?
no, that was the OV-1 Mohawk was an observation surveillance airplane that the Army had, twin engine. It was quite a sophisticated airplane. We had radar sensors, infrared sensors, and we also did day photos and just day reconnaissance. But most of the missions that I flew were infrared missions, which almost all of our missions, except the small amount of day flights, were at night. And so I guess that was the hardest part of that tour, I guess, was flying around 1,500 feet in the valleys at night. So the flying was kind of hairy. So, but I made it through it. So, and
What did you do after Nam?
I went to school for 4 years. Army sent me to all kind of schools after the first tour in Nam, including helicopter school, and so I went back to Vietnam in '71, late '71, and was there most of '72. Most of that tour I had staff positions, flying helicopters, but not flying combat assaults or anything like that. Flying mostly admin, and some command and control. I was stationed most of that year in the Central Highlands at Pleiku, and so But again, I was there for what a lot of people would know as the Easter Offensive in 1972, when the NVA made a big push. Of course, the Americans had pulled out a lot of troops by then, and there weren't a lot of American ground troops left. It was mostly support units left. But I was there during that time. I was there when the NVA introduced the first actual tanks into South Vietnam, and so it's.
So, and where did you go after the second tour?
After the second tour, I came back and went to school for a year, I guess. No, I came back to school, and I was assigned to the transportation school at Fort Eustis, Virginia, and we were there for 3 years, and then I was assigned to Germany again. And of course, that time Norma, they didn't go with me, but they came shortly afterwards. Norma and all 3 kids. And I was in the 5th Corps headquarters. We had took a lot of weekend trips. We camped everywhere we went, and so with 3 kids and a Volkswagen bus, that was the best way to go. And so the kids were from, I guess they were from like 5 to 10, starting out, and grew up. But it was a great time for the kids, and like I say, we traveled all over Europe, went to almost every country that you could travel to at that time. We did go to East Germany. We took a train to Berlin and walked into East Germany at that time. So that was an exciting time too. But I think the kids really enjoyed it. You asked me earlier if I'd do it over again. I'd say, yeah, I would. The worst part of those 2 years that I was in Vietnam and missed everything at home. Norma did a good job taking care of all that, but we missed those 2 years. But the rest of the time, I think we couldn't have had a better work environment, family environment than what we had in the Army. So it turned out to be a real plus.
Awesome.
So,
now, what did you do after that? After your Germany?
Oh, after Germany, I came back to Fort Benning, Georgia. We were assigned to Fort Benning, Georgia. Had a beautiful old, I guess, antebellum house that was built back in the 30s there at Fort Benning, Georgia. If you ever see the movie, We Were Soldiers, I guess. If you see that movie, a lot of the area that they filmed in the movie was right there at Fort Benning, and but that was a great place for family. Also, we lived on post. The kids walked to school, walked to the movies. We had all the youth activity, ball teams, and all that right there. So that was really a good assignment. And then after that assignment, I was assigned to Redstone, and when we moved back to Redstone, we built a house on a farm I bought earlier, and so I commuted to Redstone for the last 2.5 years, which was really nice. A nice way to end up my career. So, and
what was the best thing about being in the military to you, individually to you?
Well, I think the best thing was the travel, the traveling what we were able to do with the kids, because we would have never been able to travel like we did, if I'd stayed here and had a job somewhere. I may have made more money, but I wouldn't have had those travel opportunities. So I really think that was the best thing that happened during the, best part of the tour, and I think Norma would agree with that too. And so, but it must not have been too good, because none of my kids wanted to go in the military. And so.
Oh, wow.
So you felt your children, your family were safe while you were over there?
In Germany? Oh yeah. It was at that time. We didn't have. It's probably safer than being some places here in the States now. You know, as a matter of fact, when we went to Germany the second time, Norma rode with them, and while we were waiting for quarters on post, we rented a place on the economy. Yeah, I guess it was about 5 miles from where I worked, but and from the schools and things like that. But the kids, Norma rode with them a time or two, and after that, they actually rode a streetcar to school every day, and so.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that would be an awesome experience. The travel and all that for your
It
kids.
was, and so
Yes.
yeah. And
What kind of education were they getting over there?
they got a good education. The military schools were good, and so Norma did a little substitute teaching while we were there. But school, after we moved on to post, the school was just across the street from where we were, and so and again, kids played sports over there too. They had scouting activities, all that. So it was great, and so.
What about when you was in Vietnam? She was back here?
Oh yeah, she's the first time I went to Vietnam, she stayed with her parents in Nashville, and then the second time we actually rented a house in Nashville, and she and the kids stayed there, and so.
Where did you meet her, and how did you come? You came back to marry her while you was off in the military?
Well, we went to school together at MTSC. She was a year behind me. We had a economics class together. I guess maybe her second year, but anyway, we started dating in my senior year, and so we kind of pledged to each other. When I went in the Army and took off, and then she got a good job. She made enough money the first summer after she graduated to buy me a ticket to come home and get married. So.
That's a good woman.
Yeah, that is.
Were they many other military people who were married like you?
Oh yeah, I'd say junior officers like we were at that time. I'd well over half, and so.
John, tell us about Vietnam, about the terrain. Was the country beautiful? The pictures I've seen of it.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you've been to some of the Caribbean islands, and some where they're kind of overcrowded and low income, that was basically our exposure to Vietnam. I wasn't out a lot because I was kind of like we was kind of like the Air Force, where they live on a nice base and have all the facilities, and of course you take all your risk and do all the times that you're mostly in danger is when you're flying, and so that was kind of the way it was for me. But even given that, like during Tet, we had a lot of rocket and mortar fire, aimed at the base. We lost several aircraft. We didn't lose anyone either of my trips right in the immediate vicinity of where I was. But I guess, and I've never had a desire to go back though. I guess I've seen that, been there, done that, and I know it's still a lot of propaganda that comes out of what you do when you do go back. But I know some people that have been back, and it did have some of the beaches were as pretty as any in the world, but once you got away from the beach, a lot of rice paddies. And then, of course, they've also got their highlands, that are somewhat similar, I guess, to the mountains here, and certainly, but it is a tropical country, so everything grows fast, and so.
How were you staying in touch with home back in that during that time?
What was that?
How were you staying in touch with Norma back?
Oh, okay. Mostly by letters. We did some eight track, not 8 track, cassette. We swapped cassettes, but we didn't have any phone contact back then. Like
Or computer.
yeah, or computers like people
Yes.
can now, and I think that's a big plus. I mean, I was during the first tour, I was sent to the Philippines for some survival training, and and you could call home from the Philippines. It was kind of expensive, but I hit a jackpot on a slot machine, won $100, so I got to call home for the next 3 nights in a row.
Okay, this is coming from a layperson. I want to know, did you like flying the plane or the helicopters?
Oh, in my case, the plane, because the OV-1 Mohawk was a heck of an aircraft, and so it was by far a better experience. Flying helicopters was okay, but it wasn't anything like flying the Mohawk. I guess if I'd been flying some of the other fixed wing, like the Bird Dog and some of those smaller aircraft, I may have thought the helicopter was better. And,
Okay, I know you do skydiving or did skydiving. Have you done any plane flying or
Nope.
helicoptering since you got out?
I have not.
Have you had the desire to?
Well, every now and then I think I'd like to, but it's expensive,
Oh, yeah.
And if you got a family, that's that's one reason I've had friends, that got out. Some of them went out, or flew for the airlines afterwards, but they got out. Most of them got out right after Vietnam or after they did one tour. But I was kind of getting up there by the time I got out, and so I really didn't have a lot of desire, to do that, and so.
All right. Did what you did in the service carry over into civilian life? Did you learn what you did in civilian life in the service?
Yes, I told you that I went to school. Well, between Vietnam tours, in addition to some military schools, the Army sent me to the University of Tennessee, and I got an MBA. So that translated later on, and actually the assignment that I had in Germany when the family went, my second assignment, I was doing budget work, and so it certainly translated. Budgets were a lot bigger then, but yeah, it translated for what I wound up doing here, actually in Lincoln County, and so
Right. How many years did you do that in Lincoln County?
16.
16
yeah,
years.
yeah.
And did a fantastic job from everything I've
Well.
heard from everybody.
Well, I hope so. It was a new experience too for the whole county, because
Yeah.
we put the whole system in for the county, and so yeah. And,
So being in the service not only made you who you are, basically, but it benefited you in your later years.
It did. Yeah, and so
I think that's something that young people today don't think about.
yeah.
But that it can be a great benefit.
Yeah.
To them. Not just
But-
serving their country, but so.
But hey, let me say too that I had some hairy experiences in the military in Vietnam, but I had it good compared to the people that were on the ground, walking through the rice paddies, setting up patrols, doing all that, and I had nothing but admiration for those that wound up doing that, and of course, that's where the majority of the people were that lost their lives, and so I remember at Da Nang, we'd see the guys when they came in after living out in the boons for months on ends, and things that they was looking for either a beer or a Coke, which they ain't had, you know, and of course we had access to that every night, and so yeah, I got a lot of respect for those that fought on the ground. And,
What led you into the direction you went in terms of flying and that kind of thing?
it just happened. Things happen.
But you had taken those classes, the aviation classes at MTSC, right?
Yeah, and I went, to get me in the military. After the military, of course, I kind of wanted to come, like, you know, a lot of people, I wanted to come back home. We had bought the farm, I guess, after my second trip to Vietnam, and my father and brothers kind of took care of it till we got out, and then we built the house when I was assigned to Redstone. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Of course, what I wound up doing was getting out and having a tractor company. I bought a tractor company out in Park City, and so I tell people, you know, I was in the Army. I went broke in the tractor business. I got me a real job and retired from it, and then I eventually retired from what little farming I did. You know, on the farm we had cows on the farm, so yeah, it's but that's kind of how things just happen sometimes, and I think without planning them.
Well, we sure do appreciate you coming and doing this interview.
Thank you very
We-
much. John
Thank you
Bradford's
for your
been
service.
Absolutely, thank you. John Bradford's been our guest here from the Warrior exhibit. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Thank you.
All right.